There really is a lot of stuff coming online. It's kind of amazing that this has kept up. I went into this field because there were big questions. This is 30 years ago, 35 years ago. Went into this field because there were big questions, and it was clear that developments in technology were really enabling new kinds of observations that were going to allow for tremendous progress. And we've seen that tremendous progress, and there's more coming.
The universe is big and old and complicated. And even though we're only able to observe a shockingly small part of it, that small part constantly reveals new insights that challenge everything we thought we knew. Today on Minds Over Matters, we welcome cosmologist and physicist Lloyd Knox, whose research tries to make sense of the ridiculously large, impossibly complex puzzle that is the cosmos. Stay tuned for a great conversation. What you deal in, the cosmos, is one of my fascinations. Like, it's one of those things that I have bookmarked pages everywhere. I've got books on my bookshelf that I read. And it seems that we are in this, like waxing, waning phase of understanding of the cosmos. So I want to just start, because I feel like I'm getting pelted with a lot of information out there in the media and social media that seems new. I want to ask you, because you live on the edge of what is knowable. You see it more clearly than most of the rest of us. What do we know that is working, and what do we not know, and what do we know that's wrong?
Well, that's a huge question, and there's an interesting mix of both. What we know that's working. We have an amazing theory of gravitational interactions. This is perhaps the most astounding physical theory of all time. Einstein's general theory of relativity. This is foundational for my field, in cosmology, where the kind of arena of cosmology is a conception of space-time that comes from Albert Einstein, in which there's literally new space being created over time. This is the expansion of space. And that's a really radical concept. It's not the concept that we naturally have about the nature of space. We can imagine moving stuff into different space, spreading stuff out over larger pre-existing space, but actually creating new space. That's something that we don't see in our experience. Our minds are not naturally developed to have intuition about that. And so one thing is we have this amazing theory of space and time, and in which, in the context of that theory, this universe should either be expanding or contracting. And in fact, it's expanding. And that was discovered by Edwin Hubble in 1929. And this theory has been tested in amazing precision ways. It's actually necessary for getting GPS correctly, so it affects almost everyone's daily life. So that anyway. So it's being explored in really exciting ways now that we can detect gravitational waves from coalescing black holes that are spiraling around each other and then merging. And as they do, they are letting out tremendous amounts of energy in the form of ripples in space-time. And starting about 10 years ago, we, meaning the scientific community, I'm not involved in this work, have been able to detect those. And it's all consistent with this theory developed in 1950. So that's.
Can I ask something really quickly? Because it seems like it's been fairly recent, within a lifetime or two, within a generation or two, considering the duration of time that we've been fixated with the cosmos, that black holes have moved from theoretical into demonstrably there, right? Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, the level of that demonstration has improved dramatically. And so even, 30 years ago when I was a postdoc, I know, from talking to my colleagues who work in galaxy evolution, it was clear then the evidence was very suggestive that inside of every galaxy at the center is a massive black hole, meaning ones with a million times the mass of the sun, humongous black holes. So there was, and then, 10 years after that, there's direct imaging of stars in the center of our galaxy, where supposedly there's a black hole, moving on orbits. Because this is a time lapse, over years, you could see these stars orbiting around what looks like nothing. Mm-hmm.
But something has to be providing the gravity for it to be orbiting around.
Exactly. Okay. And so you could then say, well, maybe it's not a black hole. Maybe somehow it's just something really dark and it's extended. But then you're like, well, how would you actually create a stable system that's doing that? And so you were just left with kind of more exotic alternatives than just having a black hole there. And then we've gone from that to imaging the event horizon effects of a black hole, using something called the Event Horizon Telescope, which is a really cool project. And then beyond that, to actually detecting these gravitational waves from colliding black holes. Now, how do we know they're colliding black holes? Well, either they're colliding black holes or someone has gone to great effort to create just the right signals, to look exactly what we think colliding black holes should look like.
You just launched a hell of a conspiracy. Somewhere, probably in Los Alamos or someplace clear nearby, someone's manufacturing this. That's so. And I have to apologize because I started you with probably the most wide runway for you to actually enter this conversation. Like I applaud you for being able to find a way in and provide answers, because it was like, explain the universe to us.
Yeah.
It's really cool. It's really cool. And I have to say that it feels like we are living in almost like a renaissance. And I don't know how you feel about this, but like we are able to see more deeply into the cosmos and ergo understand its nature, or be faced with a whole bunch of new questions that we didn't even foresee. And it seems like headline after headline after headline, like once the Webb telescope launched, it was just like, whoa. Like, we're starting to see galaxies that are beyond 13 billion years, away light-wise, that have more of a structure than they should. So there are like all these questions that are popping up around that. And then we've got, the Vera Rubin Observatory, which is giving us all new insights into like the kinetic nature of the universe and how actually active it is. Do you ever hit a point in these revelations where your mind is blown and you kind of like I'm a hologram or something, like, I don't know, little personal meltdowns or something?
Honestly, most of the time, this feels like a job and with things to figure out. Mm-hmm. And it's opportunities to have conversations like this that remind me that like being connected to being exposed to your curiosity about this, or if it's a public lecture and being exposed to the audience's curiosity and getting to be a part of that is a reminder, of how mind-blowing this stuff can be, and how fortunate I am to get to participate in this exploration.
Yeah.
And then the other part of that is that what is presented in a headline is almost always sensationalized. Right? They're trying to sell newspapers. They're trying to get clicks, and reporting accurately, like this. This result is basically a confirmation of Cosmologist standard model. Boring.
Yeah.
Saying this result shakes the foundations of everything we've ever known. Anyway, that's the kind of, headline that people tend to go with making these editorial decisions. And so it's not as it's not as tumultuous as things would look. At the same time, there are new things we're learning, and it is really exciting. And there are puzzles out of the James Webb Space Telescope. And but and there are people thinking about, are we learning something foundationally important, like that would take us from an estimate of the universe as 14 billion years. No, it must be 40 billion years, and there's must be some new ingredient that's invoking all these exotic things, and or maybe our understanding of star formation which is a complicated process and hard to calculate from first principles. Maybe we have more to learn about how star formation proceeds, and it's just, there's not new physical laws that we're learning. We just are learning how the same physical laws that we know about play out in different environments.
See, that's the debunker of the headlines that I'm always reading, like new laws of physics, the physics break down, and blah 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 blah. And it's like, and I can appreciate it. And I've spoken with some cosmologists. We had Andy Albrecht on here a while ago, who was one of the authors of the expansion theory, right?
Well, inflation, right?
Sorry, right. So I mean, he was in there, and he kind of shared that his mind has been challenged over the years, at all these things. But one of the things that I really love about your approach is there's something to be fascinated with. The common, the mundane is really not common and mundane. It is like so unlikely that this exists. Like there are so many different things that have to happen for us to exist. That's fascinating in and of itself. And let's not lose sight of that, because that should be our goal, is to understand that. And it's fun to entertain some of these distractions once in a while, but there are core things to be done. So you mentioned talking to the general public. I want to actually mention to listeners here and viewers, for those of you who are checking this out on YouTube, that you actually host a series of conversations where you go out to the general public, and it's called Cosmic Connections, and you just engage in people, schmoes like me, who have questions about, I saw this thing that we're born inside of a black hole. Is that accurate? And that's my accent. So that's the way I sound to myself. But so you're out there and explaining to people on a regular basis, like, this is what we do. There is plenty to be in awe of. This is where we are, and this is what we understand. And I know you have just kind of barely scratched the surface on it, but you've had a couple of these conversations already. It's a new program that you're talking about. How are they going, and what are you generally hearing from the audience?
Yeah, we've I've been doing public lectures off and on for decades, and I've always really enjoyed it. I've always particularly enjoyed the question and answer phase. It's really fun getting to hear people, trying to put their question into words, and I'm always so and when people are doing that, I'm always so grateful. It's like, you're really thinking about what I said. I love it, so I've been doing that for a while, but with my partner in this, Marcus Ludi, also a professor in the same department, but with somewhat different expertise than myself, we've done a couple of these, and we're looking to do more, particularly in rural areas that might not usually have as much opportunity for conversations like this. We haven't gotten out to rural areas yet. We've done an event in Sacramento, and we did Picnic Day here at UC Davis, and it's gone really well. Our format is largely Q&A. So we have a brief setup where we talk a little bit about the questions that we wrestle with, and provide some context for people to begin asking questions, and it's gone really well. So at least I think, actually one thing that we plan to do is start having a QR code at the end where people can fill out a survey, so we can get a better sense of how we're coming across and get some feedback. Yeah, I mean, people are asking good questions, and it's a pleasure to get the chance to ask them. I like working with Marcus because we do have some, complementary knowledge, and so I get to sit back and let him answer something. He gets to do the same for me, I look forward to getting out into the communities around here. I'm really interested in finding hosts for such events. We can, if Marcus or I tried to do that ourselves, we wouldn't know what we were doing. We don't know these communities. But if you're somebody who would be interested in hosting us in some way, please get in touch with me.
Yeah, and that's, if you're out there and you're listening and you have a civic group or a church group or of a library that hosts these kind of conferences, I can tell you firsthand, having been at one of these, that it's fascinating. It goes so fast, like too fast. You know what I mean? Like I want this to keep going forever because I don't think I'm unique in this way that I feel like this is an important question. I wrestle with, what am I going to wear today? Or we're like, what are we going to eat for dinner? Blah, blah, blah. Like the same questions that come up. But you live on like, why are we here? kind of a strata that just transcends that. Yeah. Or how are we here? Or, maybe not why. But it's fascinating. So if you're out there, please reach out to Lloyd. Or reach out to us and we'll connect you. But let me get back into a couple of the more minutia deals here. You talked about dark energy. That seems to be a very fertile ground where we are learning a lot quickly. Is that accurate?
We're it's unclear. We're learning something, and it's often difficult to know what are we learning. And in my field, there's often competing explanations, right, for the same phenomenon. And so we're learning about dark energy, but maybe we're learning about something that has nothing to do with dark energy. I should probably back up some and say, what is dark energy? Right? Well, I'd love to know actually what dark energy is, but why do we even have this ingredient? What does it do for us? And our leading, I don't know, depending on who you talk to, it'd be a different answer perhaps. But to me, our leading theory of dark energy is that it's an energy associated with every cubic centimeter of space. So certainly we're not used to thinking of space having some energy associated with it. But it can. And in fact, according to quantum mechanics, it should. When I talked before about the expansion of space. So as the expansion being this creation of new space over time, there's also this creation of this energy associated with it over time. And it's a little bit hard to get across why. But having that energy associated with every cubic centimeter of space actually leads to an acceleration of the expansion rate. The rate of expansion gets faster and faster and faster. And that's what we're observing. We're observing an accelerating expansion. And that's the most direct evidence we have that there is something like this, what we call a cosmological constant. A word for this energy associated with every cubic centimeter of space is a cosmological constant. So it's constant spatially, constant over time. This energy that's in the universe. And so we have ways of taking measurements that are sensitive to how the universe has expanded over time. And that has continued to look, consistent with the cosmological constant, plus the normal matter in the universe, what we'd expect from that, until quite recently, a few years ago, and evidence started building for a departure from that. That maybe actually this dark energy is not constant, but is evolving with time itself. And so I think that's what you're referring to. And I mean, we could. There's a number of different ways I could talk more about that.
Well, I'll one of our upcoming guests, Nancy Agarwal, who this is one of the things that she's studying, comes from MIT, was involved in LIGO. Is that the right acronym? Yeah. And I think her specialty is going to be measuring dark energy on a smaller scale. And we're going to actually have a lab here that's set up to do just that, which is kind of exciting. Again, it puts you like at the front lines of everything. So I'm just kind of like, it seems to me like there's a lot of investment in this, in time and energy and curiosity. And the way I understand it, and please correct me if I'm wrong in this, but it almost seemed like it's like a binary, where we look at the cosmos, and we can recognize about 35-40% of it as matter. What's the other? What's the balance? What makes up the rest of it? It's got to be. We'll call it dark energy, and and that will be like like some people refer to all colas as Coke. What is it? Like that's the Coke of the cosmos. Like it's just we'll name it dark energy, and we don't really know what it is, understand what it is, but we're going to start to measure it anyway, and hopefully we'll have some insights. So did I miss anything? Obviously, a very humble.
No, that's fair enough. And one thing I want you to know, but you mentioned it seems like there's a lot of investment in it, and there has been, right? And there's been a UC Davis role in that too. Among other things, you mentioned Professor Albrecht. He and Andy Albrecht and I served on a national task force called the Dark Energy Task Force. How cool sounding is that?
Did you have to carry a gun? I would have just to round it out, to complete the image. That's awesome.
Yeah, and this was, we were charged with basically recommending giving recommendations relevant to creating a national program in dark energy research. And that's helped fund a number of things that are coming to fruition now, such as the Vera Rubin Observatory that you mentioned, which also has a strong UC Davis connection with our colleague Tony Tyson.
Yeah. One of Time's 100 most interesting people. And I think it's fascinating. Yeah. So people are looking at this same question through different lenses from all around 360 degrees or the sphere of it all, looking at it with kind of like you said, there are not necessarily conflicting, but there are multiple attempts to explain it that sometimes jive, sometimes don't. Is anything winning in this? Does anything to you resonate like I think it's this?
Well, if I had to pick a winner right now, I'd go with the word dark horse just came up, but to throw into the dark mix. But I would not go with the dark horse. I would go with the boring thing I talked about, the cosmological constant, and that will survive these current challenges. That that's largely. That could just be biased due to me watching 30 years or 20 plus years of the standard model continuing to win, and it's just the evidence is not that overwhelming right now that we really need anything. Something seems a little bit off though, There different kinds of explanations have to do with also with maybe there's some type of interaction actually between dark matter and dark energy, and that's a model that phenomenologically works better than just having, in my view, than just having the dark energy evolve. Of course, this is still a model where dark energy is evolving, but it's actually interacting with the dark matter. And it's kind of pleasing that these two new ingredients actually have something to do with each other. So that's a really exciting possibility, and we will learn more about that with new data. I mean, there really is a lot of stuff coming online. It's kind of amazing that this has kept up. I went into this field because there were big questions. This is 30 years ago, 35 years ago. Went into this field because there were big questions, and it was clear that developments in technology were really enabling new kinds of observations that were going to allow for tremendous progress. And we've seen that tremendous progress, and there's more coming.
And I have to say, I wonder how many times do you have to even dip a toe into the philosophical ends of the questions, and not even philosophical, but like if you were talking about how quantum factors into this, and there, in quantum, there's like the famous Schrodinger's cat thing where like in order for a thing to be A or B, it has to be observed to be A or B. Like that's what collapses that wave function and makes it solidly one thing. As we observe more and more of the universe, thanks to the new technology, it begs the question, at least in the social media channels that I follow, which are not necessarily reliable but fun, they're thought provoking. But like, are we creating the universe as we're able to view more of it? And is that why we're seeing things that are older than the universe? It's like, I don't know. I feel when I talk about this thing sometimes that somebody's going to come with a big net and put it over my head and carry me away. You're like, no. You're kind of off. But I mean, there's so many elements that
Dean Antiquana, we've got to talk about Ed Kiggins.
Just right. He needs a break, a paid break. So, but I mean, like, how do you have to be mindful where you sit of all these different, again, I'm going to use the word loosely, philosophies, but all these different viewpoints that need to be considered because they come from scientific, like quantum, for instance.
Yeah. So with the quantum mechanics, first I want to say that actually fascination with quantum mechanics is one thing that drew me into studying physics. In the senior in high school, I read this book called In Search of Schrodinger's Cat, and that I just loved. And big part of what drew me into physics, and almost all my work has really connected with classical physics since then. So I don't have deep expertise in quantum mechanics, and a lot of what I've learned from Andy Albrecht. But let's go into it. So are we, by the act of observing, altering the universe? In fact, observing these things where where the light we're seeing has been traveling for billions of years, even 13 billion years, and I would say no. There's this sorting out from this superposition of the dead and alive cat to either dead definitely or either alive definitely. I don't think that there's anything special about a human observer that kind of causes that to happen, and to me that would be really that would be strange and exotic. And there are different ways of understanding what's happening there that don't require an observer having to define what an observer is as distinct from any element of the universe. And it's that basically one way of putting it is once a system has been affected, one thing we're a collection of huge numbers of particles. We're a very large system, compared to the microscopic realm. Once something has kind of interacted and influenced a very large number of particles, it becomes very difficult to observe any of the weird things we associate with quantum mechanics. Those observables just become impossible to access. And so the world looks classical. But there's nothing about a human being doing the observing. So the things that we're seeing coming to us from the edge of the observable universe, they're already behaving, in a way where a classical description is a great approximation. And we're not influencing that. Anyway, that's...
No, that checks out. And I respect the discipline it takes to say the simplest answer is usually the right one, because it's true. It's just that, how do you quiet the mind from racing in so many different directions? Because
but at the same time, in the work that you mentioned that Andy Albrecht did with Paul Steinhardt to create this first working model of something called cosmic inflation, one of the really appealing things about that development is it provides a way for quantum mechanics to essentially create the seeds of all the structure in the universe today. And so they're in kind of our leading theory about the origin of all structure in the universe, quantum mechanics plays a central role. And there's people have also, anyway, some people heard of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, right? That you can't know a particle's, simultaneously know perfectly its position and perfectly its momentum. And it's even deeper than that. It's like a particle, to some degree, those can't be both simultaneously perfectly well defined. It's not a matter of knowing or not. It's like how the system is. And there's a similar uncertainty principle that you can apply to the early universe, of fields in the early universe, that you can't simultaneously know the value of the field and how it's changing at the same time, and that there's and because of that there's some minimum energy it has to have, and that necessarily fluctuates from one place to another, and it's those fluctuations that eventually lead to one region of the universe being a little denser than another. And those small departures from complete homogeneity eventually grow to become all the structure we see in the universe today.
Which is profound. That's another thing. I can't remember what there's like a filamental kind of structure to the universe that is like massive and has an order to it. Apparently. So that has to be driven by something, either attraction or repulsion or something that drives matter into these little pockets where we can see them.
It is driven by gravitational attraction from particular initial conditions, right? So actually fairly simple from a statistical standpoint, random distributions of these density inhomogeneities, combining that with the fact that a denser region is going to pull harder on the material around it than that material around it's going to pull on it. So matter will flow out of those underdense regions into the denser regions, and those density contrasts increase over time because of that. It's an unstable process, right? This becomes even more overdense relative to here, and so that amplifies the draw of gravity, and that it's that simple process that takes these initial, few parts in 100,000 fluctuations and creates, overdensities that then collapse, that become, much larger and then collapse into what, eventually forms a galaxy, for example. And then on a larger scale structure, even on larger scales than galaxies, you're right. Galaxies are arranged into clusters and then filaments that are connecting the clusters, voids, where there's hardly anything. That structure arises out of some simple early conditions that we theorize we can get from inflation and quantum mechanics, and just gravity playing out over time.
That, you just explained that in a way that like that actually tickled my scalp in a good way. like, oh, thank God I don't have to worry about that. But like just the fact that, the attraction is what causes that filamental nature, that thank you for that. I appreciate that. I'm going to go home and think about this for quite a while, and I'll come back with 1,000 more questions, I know, because that's just the way it goes, especially when social media is going to have its way with me. No, that's not right. We live inside of a black hole. So let me ask this. We talked about that, the math that's involved in the theory of inflation. Some small mathematical phrase contained within there has to be able to be extracted and applied to this cosmic constant. So, I mean, because the universe is not done creating itself, and as it goes on, is that pretty consistent? And so that's question one. And question two is, this must have been modeled over time, like that, with the computing power that we now have at our disposal. Is the structure that we see now in the universe consistent with that 13, 14 billion year old universe? And this is what would happen with this much matter over time.
All right. So on the first thing, you sounds like you're making a connection between inflation and the acceleration of the expansion rate today. Right. And we haven't really talked about inflation, but you must have learned some things from Andy Albrecht talking about this. And you're right. These are both epochs in which the expansion is accelerating. And what drove that initial acceleration, there may be something similar driving it now, meaning dark energy could be the same kind of field, like that was driving, a similar kind of field as what was driving inflation initially. We don't know, but it's possible that these are very similarly related phenomena, just at incredibly different scales.
And I only make that allegory because the direction seems to be the same. It's about growth. Okay. And the math around the growth of the universe, whether it's immediately after the Big Bang or as it starts to accelerate now, there's got to be, or maybe there doesn't. I don't know. But I mean, I guess that's what I'm asking you. Is there a consistency that you might have been able to say, I'm going to look at I'm going to extract these numbers from the initial inflation of the universe, and I'm going to multiply it times, X billions of years. Am I close? Like, does this check out with that math? So our understanding is not good enough to take a model of an inflation and then predict that the universe, the expansion will be accelerating now. We don't understand things well enough to do that. It's more that we see that the universe is accelerating again, and we're trying to come to terms with that, and explain it. And we don't know whether they're connected or not. Gotcha. And that kind of answers my second question, which was, well, and even if we had to reduce it, like if we had to go back in the opposite direction and like almost decompute the universe that is now and bring it back to its singularity, is it consistent? Is it explainable? Or are there things that won't allow that to happen? So you're trying to like take the universe that it is now and then kind of run the clock backwards and it's I guess I'd start the other way around, right? I feel on more solid ground, which is that from this fairly simple picture of the early universe, filled with this plasma of hydrogen, almost entirely hydrogen, a little bit of helium, apparently dark matter, all the particles that we know of in the standard model of particle physics, and these small departures from complete homogeneity, from inflation, presumably, from those conditions. I don't think that there's anything that we've observed. Well, in broad brush, what we see
in all kinds of different observations is consistent with that picture, with that starting point and gravitational instability acting as it does. Now, with the James Webb observations, how you actually go from those simple early conditions to the complexity of stars and galaxies and black holes and quasars, and that's really hard to work out. And people have been surprised, with what has been seen. And some people have gone as far as to say, wow, there's no way that amount of structure formation happened in the short amount of time that this model says we should have between these early, plasma with these smooth initial conditions, and then just 800 million years later, all these humongous galaxies. Some of that was in the very early days. There was a miscalibration. The calibration of the instrument was still being done, and so things were not as luminous as people originally thought. And my colleagues who work on these things, I don't. Galaxy formation is really hard. I try to do easier things. They tell me, that the expectations are really based on observing the kind of more recent universe and just extrapolating like nothing was different, in terms of how stars and black holes form, that nothing was different at earlier times. And we're probably learning, is my hunch, that no, actually the processes are working out a bit differently. One reason they may be is that there's sensitivity to the kind of elements that are present. The initial objects forming, there's basically just hydrogen and helium. And not until you form the first stars do you start building up other elements. And so those are different conditions under which these first stars are forming. And you may just be able to, and it may play out quite differently. I'm really venturing into stuff I don't work on myself.
No, but you're explaining it really, really well, and I appreciate that because you're right. I mean, iron didn't exist until whatever, and now that iron exists, it has this effect on the way things grow or the way things develop. It doesn't sound to me like you are ready to abandon the classical theories. Nothing has challenged you that strongly that you're like, nah, this all checks out according to the more classical vision of physics and cosmology.
And I am so eager, to find new things, that really do challenge that. And it's and there's this real balance between eagerness for the new and really exciting, and a skepticism that kind of keeps us sane and from wasting time on something that isn't really pointing us in the direction that I hope it is. Now, where I have, there is a discrepancy with the predictions of the Standard Model that I have been very interested in, which has to do with the current rate of expansion of the universe. And I don't really care too much whether the universe, what the current rate is, whether it's one way we talk about this rate is we talk about it in it could sound like funny units. So 67 kilometers per second per megaparsec. And let me take a moment to just say why that unit makes sense. So I mentioned how the expansion of space is this creation of new space. And, well, a megaparsec is a distance. It's about the distance that light travels in 3 million years, right? So light traveling at 186,000 miles a second. If you let that go on for 3 million years, you've gone 1 megaparsec.
It's also the speed that the Millennium Falcon took to make the Kessel Run, I think.
Right, even though it's a distance.
Right.
Yeah. And so in every megaparsec, there's so many, there's like there's about 70 new kilometers created every second. That's the current rate of expansion of space. And we have different ways of estimating it. And one way, which is really involves our standard cosmological model heavily, the assumptions of that model, calibrated on data, calibrated on really informative data that can help us pin down the parameters of this model, pin down the unknown things about the model. You do that and you predict it's like 67 plus or minus 0.3 kilometers per second per megaparsec. So again, 67 new kilometers created every second in a given megaparsec. And you can also measure this without any use of the cosmological model. You can directly look for the influence of this expansion on how light is being stretched to longer wavelengths. So when we look at an object that's far away and the light's coming towards us, the fact that space is expanding as that light travels to it actually stretches out the wavelength of the light. And we call it a redshift because in the visible part of the spectrum, red is a longer wavelength than blue. And so that red shifting of the light is a result of the expansion. So if we can figure out how far away something is, and we measure how much the light has been stretched, we can use that to determine the rate of expansion. And so efforts to do that with astronomical measurements, most precise ones, get something that's like 73 plus or minus 0.8 compared to 67 plus or minus 0.3 or 68 plus or minus 0.3. I don't something like that. And these are at face value inconsistent, right? These are different results, and statistically, that difference is statistically significant. And it's something that people have different opinions about whether this is also, like I've poo-pooed these claims that from the James Webb we're learning that, the universe had to be, billions of years old by then instead of just, 800 million years old because otherwise you couldn't have formed all this stuff. And I'm fairly cautious about that, with this discrepancy in the expansion rate, I've been pretty excited that maybe we're learning something new here, and I've spent time trying to understand what could be causing this, and anyway, that's been a lot of fun, and there's a variety. There's real differences of opinions in the field about whether this is just solidly demonstrated. We have this problem of the standard cosmological model, or there are people in the community who say, you know what? I think that those measurements of the distances to stars and their redshifts, it's the distances that are hard. That those uncertainties are actually larger than stated. And so fun. Anyway, so anyway, I just wanted to give you another flavor of where I've been impressed enough by the measurements to spend time thinking about, are we really learning something fundamentally new here? And that's been fun.
All right, I bet. Yeah, and I have to ask you personally: do you ever walk up to the edge of new knowledge and become intimidated? Like, it's got to be to have you who have studied this for decades, to have these revelations has got to sometimes shake you off of your core. Do you find that? Like, do you have that experience? I know you said before, like, it's a job, but is the fascination ever just like take you over?
I mean, sometimes I do, if I'm overcome at all, it's not like intimidation, it's awe, right? It's just, kind of waking up to just how amazing this universe is and how amazing the human effort is to understand this. And the two together is extraordinary. That one of my experiences of this, perhaps my most intense experience of this, came from an effort to detect. This is somebody else's prediction. And it's a prediction. It's in our of the standard model that has to do with these particles called neutrinos, traveling faster than sound waves in the plasma. So the neutrinos are these particles that very weakly interact with themselves or other things. They're streaming through the Earth right now. We're not noticing it, and they stream through the plasma of the early universe. They were a significant part of the energy density at the time. In fact, at one point they were the dominant energy density in the universe, a little bit more than is in these particles called photons, particles of light. They could travel at the speed of light out of overdense regions, and that had an influence on how sound waves in the plasma evolved. It had an influence on how gravity drove those sound waves with a particular signature in something we can observe called the cosmic microwave background, which I can't believe the first time I've said those words in our hour of talking here. And my team here, just a few graduate students and I, were able to tease the signature out of the data that you'd expect from these neutrinos traveling faster than the plasma could travel. And this is something happening very early in the history of the expansion, and just that we could do that. We could take this predicted signal and compare it with the data and actually see it there. It's like this is like we're touching the Big Bang in some way. This connection with the Big Bang.
It's existential. You know what I mean? Like you have entered philosophy at that point. And I don't think there's any way around it. So I have to just a quick aside, a story that I was reminded of as you were talking. I once was hanging out with an ophthalmologist, like you do, and we were talking about the complexities of the human eye, and he made this incredible point, saying, like, consider the impacts of evolution on the eye, like reverse engineer life back to its simplest. On a bacteriological level, a bacteria maybe had one photovoltaic cell on its back that it used to gather energy and keep itself alive. That was its source of food or whatever, or sustenance. Over time, now flash forward, now reverse evolution and flash forward, and that single cell has become the human eye. Human eye now can perceive height, width, depth, can infer time with the observations. So if you reverse that back again to that single cell with a single photovoltaic, cell in its back, that bacteria, does that mean height, width, and depth didn't exist? Or did we just evolve to a place where we were able to perceive them? Did we create them through our ability to perceive? So I take that math, and then it blew my mind when he started referencing string theory and M theory, and saying string theory has the capacity to be like the E equals MC squared, like that elegant solution that unifies many sciences, although string theory could explain a lot. However, in order for string theory to be believed, it takes 10 dimensions. So when you now apply that to the evolution of that cell into an eye, and you think where humans are on that scale, we still have 6, arguably, dimensions left to go. I mean, and I think certain people are doing like strings as the smaller, but there's a larger. It just makes you think like, the things that you are up against are the things that we're going to evolve to understand, hopefully. Like if growth is the direction of just like expansion or inflation of a universe, and the expansion of the universe after time are the consistent outgrowth. If evolution allows us to grow, one day we might actually be able to comprehend all the things that we can't comprehend now. We could hopefully see them I apologize. That was a little bit more than a small road trip, but it's that concept lives in me every day, and I see, or maybe I try to see it proved out. So that said, if you could wave a magic wand, would you want to understand it?
Yeah, it's I've had some chance to reflect on science and what I like about it by contemplating AI. And so we had a physics colloquium a few months ago. Somebody from Google DeepMind, and he started off saying, "I've written 40 papers in theoretical physics, and I've enjoyed that process. And a couple of years ago, I decided I'm not writing anymore. I'm building machines that can do physics." And then proceeded to make a case that, this is coming. And one reaction I could have had was, oh, great, I can sit on the beach and read the physics papers written by the AI and get my curiosity satisfied much more easily. That was not my reaction. Really there was a sadness, and I realized I really love the process of trying to figure this stuff out.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that about you. You have a passion for it. And we're grateful, believe me. Those of us on this end are grateful. So you feel like...
Well, I'm really torn. If I was, offered the magic wand, could I resist using it? Absolutely not. But I'd also, I'd also really feel some sadness that there was this magic wand in the world, and now this playground. I don't know. It'd be real getting really adjusting to have the process I've enjoyed engaging in for my working life. All of a sudden, basically, my value in that just all of a sudden, or any human being, just taken away. There'd be grief around that for sure. Right?
Yeah, I could see that. You're reduced from an explorer to someone who's verifying the accuracy of a map that's provided to you, kind of a thing. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I could see that. Well, you know what? I don't have a dog in the race, so I'm willing to let your desire be what we all root for, because again, the work that you and your colleagues and your team do is just it. First of all, it feeds us. I'm going to go out on a limb and say I'm not the only person who's intrigued by this concept, as evidenced by the amount of stuff I see on social media and in the media in general that has to deal with this. Like, you're talking about how we got here. That's about the important question that's ever been asked. It's up in the top one, I would say. So, I mean, as long as you continue to work and share your information and your findings with us, we will be grateful. And if anyone presents an AI-generated solution, we would require you to verify it anyway. So don't think you're going to be out of a job soon. Did we miss anything that you really want to talk about? Is there anything about the cosmos that we have not explored?
Well, we've certainly covered a lot of ground, and I can't recall what was in our stuff before we started recording and what isn't. But one thing I definitely want to have come across is just how integrated we are. We are a part of the cosmos. You are connected to the cosmos by being a human being, and that our bodies, right, are made out of these exotic processes. I talked about the galaxy forming and collapsing. That collapse is driven by dark matter. That galaxy forming essential to having stars form in these galaxies. Those stars essential to producing almost every element in your body.
We are stardust. We are golden.
Carl Sagan had it right. And it's we're a result of extraordinary things that we only partly understand.
Yeah. And I didn't know Carl Sagan said that. I was quoting Joni Mitchell.
We are star stuff, is what Carl Sagan said. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess that's a slight variation that allows them to both take ownership of it. But
just thanks for the opportunity to speak on this podcast. You talked about the great appeal these questions have. I'm really grateful for curiosity people have. And again, if you want to host something in your community and you're within driving distance of UC Davis, get in touch with us.
Yeah. And to be clear, Lloyd will come to you.
Right.
So
yes.
And it's Cosmic Connections is the program. And I'm going to think there's going to be a lot of interest out there. So just get in touch with Lloyd. You will not be disappointed. It's a great show. So. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming by today.
Thank you, Ed.
All right. We'll talk later. Sincerest thanks to today's guest, Lloyd Knox. If you'd like to learn more about Lloyd's work, check out our YouTube page for links to his bio, books, articles, research, and more. And thank you for joining Minds Over Matters today. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Please subscribe, share with your friends, and spread the word. We have a lot to say, and we guarantee something for everyone. Minds Over Matters is hosted by Ed Kiggins, produced by the College of Letters and Science at UC Davis, and filmed at the Larry Chandler Memorial Studio. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.